there'll always be people who go, oh, well, yeah, don't tell me what to eat. Well, fine, okay, I'm not telling you what to eat, but I'm just bringing to your attention. And then what we do is stuff them full of lovely grub and kindness. And look, this is what we eat. This is how we eat. And, the comment that I tend to always get back after my parties is, well, wasn't that difficult for you to make a party where, you're serving up all this lovely food, but you're vegan? And I'm saying, yeah, but you didn't eat anything that wasn't vegan. Really? Well, if I knew it was that tasty, I'd have gone vegan earlier, because I agree that you shouldn't be unkind to animals. I'm an animal lover. Oh, and you can see the cogs turn. You can see them making the connection, and it's pretty magical, actually.
As a vegan, do you ever feel like you're living in a parallel universe, aware of things that many others don't even seem to notice, let alone acknowledge? I'm Chrissy Benson, host of the Vegan Posse podcast. We talk with vegans from around the globe who, like you, are living lives of integrity and compassion with an eye toward justice. Through their personal stories, you'll come to see that you're not an outlier. In fact, you're part of an entire posse of individuals who aren't just keeping the peace, they're creating it through their food choices and beyond. You won't be saddling up, but you're in for the ride of your life. Welcome to the Vegan Posse. Hey Posse, I'm your host, Chrissy Benson, and this is this week's co-host, Daisy. Far and away the best part of hosting the Vegan Posse is the amazing, interesting, unconventional people I get to introduce you to. You may recall last week's amazing, extraordinary guest, Dr. Frank Sabatino. Well, this week, I'm delighted to introduce you to Dr. Frank's equally amazing, extraordinary partner, Jayney Goddard. I sensed I'd have an instantaneous connection with Jayney, and that turned out to be the case. From aerial artiste to founder of the Complementary Medicine Association, Jayney's had more adventures than many of us do in a lifetime. She has a Master of Science postgraduate degree from UCLancashire, England. Hope I pronounced that correctly. And she trained in mind-body medicine at Harvard Medical School under Dr. Herbert Benson, the father of mind-body medicine. Jayney herself faced a life-threatening illness that left her wheelchair-bound for 10 years. And through lifestyle and dietary changes, she not only recovered her health, but rewound her own body clock in the process. She compiled her recommendations in her latest book, Rewind Your Body Clock, the complete natural guide to a happier, healthier, younger you. You can find it on Amazon and on her website, jayneygoddard.org. And that's Jayney spelled Jayney. So enjoy this conversation with Jayney Goddard. Jayney, welcome to the Vegan Posse. Are you ready for the ride of your life?
Oh my goodness, am I ever? Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited to be with you. It's a real honor. Thank you. And I don't know if you can see him, but I'm joined by Jesse. He's my beautiful rescue boy, and he'll be poking his head in every so often because he's starved for attention since I got the two kittens. Well, he's not starved for attention.
Oh my goodness.
He is. So yes, he's a little bit jealous.
Yes. How does he get along with the kittens?
Fine. He wants to. He's a lover, not a fighter. So he just wants to be everybody's friend. And they're not so sure just yet because they're only babies. So
Very sweet. The family expands.
Yes, it does.
So you have such an interesting background that I have no idea where all we're going to go in this conversation, but I'm just excited to hear everything you want to share. So I understand you were a ballerina, and you say you accidentally joined the circus. So how did that happen?
Well, yes, that's exactly what happened. So what happened was, yes, I was a ballet dancer. And back in those days, when you were at ballet school, stage school, or just getting to the point where you're getting professional jobs, in the UK, we had an actors or performers union called Equity, very similar, I think, to Screen Actors Guild, that sort of thing, making the performing arts a closed shop. So you couldn't get a job if you didn't have a union card, but you couldn't get the union card without having a job. So we were always drummed into us right from the get-go, if you ever get an equity contract, you must take it. So we the people came along to our ballet school, and they held auditions. We didn't really know what it was for. And it was an equity contract. So, of course, myself and a couple of the other girls, we all signed on the dotted line. Said, yeah, we'll do this job, whatever it is. Turned out it was a forerunner to Cirque du Soleil. So this is why they were
Oh,
recruiting ballet dancers. So we were young, were incredibly fit, we had no sense of our own mortality, and we were willing to do whatever it took, to fulfill this equity contract. So yeah, that's how I sort of accidentally became a circus artist. So I started off as a dancer in this particular circus in London. It was a static circus in Battersea Park, and then I then became an aerialist. I realized that I could do a lot
wow.
of these circus acts, particularly the aerial stuff.
Oh,
And
that's
so,
amazing. So how
yes,
old were you at that time?
I was sweet 16. I was
Oh
sweet
my
16.
word. Oh my word.
Yeah.
So you left home? Your parents, what did your parents think?
They were quite encouraging, actually, strangely enough.
Really?
They were quite glad to say, "Be gone, child." No, I think they were quite. They were happy because I'd already got a place at university at 16.
Mhm,
I'd already qualified and so on to do a degree in the performing arts, and they were smart enough to know that I could always go back and pick
mhm.
that up at any stage, pretty much. So I think they felt, well, this is an interesting life experience, something that you wouldn't normally get to do. I don't think they quite realised the ramifications of being an aerialist in the circus. But, because I said, and don't worry, parents, I'm doing aerial ballet. Oh, that's nice, dear. That sounds lovely. And actually, I was actually doing high wire and flying trapeze and, all sorts of other
I was
things.
gonna ask, yeah, exactly what an aerialist means. Wow.
Yes, yeah,
Wow.
anything up in the air without a safety net, pretty much. Yeah, yeah,
Wow, that sounds so you're very adventurous, clearly.
yes, very much so. Yeah.
So how long did you travel with that
Well, I was
circus?
I was doing various circuses. So circuses don't stay together. A lot of people think a circus stays together and travels together. Actually, they don't. It's just like any other performer. You have an agent.
Oh.
You do a season on a show, and
Uh-huh.
then your agent will book you onto another show. So all in all, I was a globe-trotting youngster for 4.5, 5 years. When you think
Wow.
that was from 16 to say 21, that was a big chunk of my life. So, that's a quarter of my life really. And so I, by that time, had sort of had enough. I missed my family. I wanted to come back to I'd come back to the UK for just, sort of like a day or two in that long period. I'd seen an awful lot and a lot of the world, picked up a lot of languages, learned a lot about other cultures. And interestingly enough, and this is where my interest in natural healthcare, complementary integrative medicine comes from, is that I was traveling in some really obscure places that had no access to conventional medicine. A lot of the time, we had no access to running water or electricity, particularly down in Mexico, South America, China, parts of China, parts of Southeast Asia, and so on. So I was seeing people having injuries, having accidents, and being treated using these different medical approaches, not conventional medicine. And so I came back to the UK. I auditioned, did a stint doing West End shows, but I just felt something was missing. And it just felt, it was lovely, but there was something I felt that I needed. Something else was drawing me, and I suddenly realised actually rewind, it was all of these things that really intrigued me. It was seeing how people were being treated with herbs and things like crushed pearls, acupuncture, and various other bits and pieces. And this was where I suddenly thought, do you know something, this is where I think I actually kind of need to be putting my energies and my focus. And so that's
Hmm.
why I got into natural healthcare, complementary integrative medicine, and so on. Yeah.
Fascinating. And regarding how were you eating during this time? And had you ever given any thought to the animals in our food system? I imagine you saw all kinds of things when you were traveling the
Yes.
world.
Well, yeah. Actually, when I was, it's a really good question, actually, Chrissy. Thank you. You've reminded me of something that I'd sort of long forgotten about. So thank you for that. Um, yes, when I was in Hong Kong and China, we on a Saturday when we didn't have a show, we would travel over. Or I tended to travel over by myself because I was kind of more into this than the other girls. I'd travel over to Lantau Island, and there was a wonderful monastery up at the top of the mountain. And I used to go there. You could go there, and it was always an open invitation from the monks. The monks on Lantau, being Buddhist monks, were eating essentially rice and just prepared vegetables, steamed but in a very light sauce. And I really got into that way of eating purely because it really kind of worked for me physically. It worked really well for me physically. But also it just kind of felt right from an energetic perspective, if that makes sense at all. Now, back then, this was the sort of, when was it, early 80s. So back then, I wasn't aware of veganism. Um, my only regret, as we all say this, don't we, unless we were lucky enough to have been born vegan, is I just wish I had known, but I didn't know. So I was kind of doing the best I could at the time. I thought I was doing all the right stuff. And this was actually kind of at the aerobics boom as well. So I was also teaching aerobics, as every dancer was, to earn a few extra pennies. And of course, at that time, we were kind of brainwashed into believing that, yeah, what you need is oily fish. What you need is a bit of salad. Keep your carbohydrates low. Have a glass of red wine and a cup of coffee in the morning. And so, I didn't know. And I didn't know that what was going on for me was that it was feeding this underlying predisposition towards autoimmune illness. When I was traveling throughout Southeast Asia, Europe, South America, Mexico, and so on, I did pick up all sorts of illnesses. So I was treated with antibiotics for years and years and years. So you
Oh,
can imagine
wow.
what that did to my gut. And again, we didn't know. We even back then, we didn't know the harm that antibiotics did. It's like they were
Wow.
giving
So
away
even though you were seeing all these alternative remedies and the
yeah,
herbal treatments and everything, but
yes.
meanwhile you were still getting traditional Western care.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, because this was a strange thing. With acute accidents and so on, the local medicine man or the local sort of the local lady who was the herbalist or what have you from the village would come in and they would bind up somebody's wrist or their ankle or what have you. I mean, I actually saw a lady who was on our show. She was pregnant. She was giving birth. She had to have a cesarean. We were right out in the wilds. This was in Southeast Asia. And there was no access to conventional medicine. It was all an emergency. She was given anesthesia by acupuncture, and it really did work. The
Wow.
cesarean went well. It was very kind of jungle surgery, but everybody was fine. She made a fantastic recovery. Baby was fine. Everything was great. So yes, we were seeing all of that. But there was still, and it's really weird. This reliance on antibiotic therapy back then. It's so 80s. That's really what was happening. So yeah, so I was eating antibiotics like Smarties, and so of course
Wow. Yeah.
the flip side of that was that my gut health was wrecked, my gut junctions were wrecked, and all of this food that I thought was good for me and everybody else thought was good for us was of course causing my immune system to go flare, 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 this isn't good. I started getting aches and pains, but I think I was kind of, generally fit. It wasn't manifesting as much as it could have done. And any aches and pains I had, I would have thought, oh, well, it's because, I'm a circus aerialist. Of course I've got aches and pains, And so you make excuses, don't you? You rationalize things. And it wasn't until I got back to the UK, I was back, I was still performing, I was still teaching dance and so on. And then when I was 30, I hit 30, had a car crash. This was the interesting thing, developed a flu type of thing for about 3 weeks after. It was really bad, couldn't get out of bed. When I ended up sort of getting out of bed, eventually, I thought, oh, that's weird. My Achilles tendons are really stiff. Didn't know what it was. And a couple of weeks later, I was a full-time wheelchair user because that was the manifestation of rheumatoid arthritis. And at this point, I still wasn't aware of veganism. I was vaguely aware of the concept, probably, but I hadn't I hadn't made the connection to animal welfare. I thought that veganism was a diet. I think most of us did back then, if we weren't lucky enough to have learned about it. And of course, you think about it, back then we had no access to the internet. Life was very insular, prior to the internet. So you only kind of knew what you knew, and you kind of knew what you knew from immediate friends and family, or perhaps reading a newspaper or what have you. And so, yeah, I don't even think that I knew very many vegetarians. And so, and thinking back at that point in London, I think there was only one vegetarian restaurant. It was called Cranks. So, and it still is, actually, it still exists. But, I'm sure they named it in a really tongue-in-cheek way. But, the rest of, not so-called normal people would look at it and go, oh, yeah, those vegetarians, they're all cranks. And it was considered to be, in the UK, vegetarianism was cranky. And I don't think we even knew the term veganism. So, yeah, it's weird. And the problem is, I'm filled with absolute abject horror knowing what I know now, but we can't know what we don't know. And I didn't even know that I could search for something. I didn't know there was another way. So it sounds horrible, doesn't it? But
No,
yeah,
we all were in the same position, and
yeah,
like you mentioned, pre-internet. It's even for
yes,
me, who did not grow up with an internet. It still
mm,
is. I do sometimes tend to forget, what it was like seeking out information before the internet. Yeah,
yeah,
changed everything. So
yes,
yeah, you're right. If you didn't have people in your immediate circles, you were kind of
yes,
figuring out everything on your
mm,
own.
mm,
You had to kind
yes,
of invent veganism on your own,
yeah, yeah,
because you wouldn't
exactly,
just see a PETA video in your,
yeah.
social
Well, that's
media
right.
feed or
Exactly.
whatever.
Yes. Yes. I don't think we even knew. We have the RSPCA here in the UK, but frankly, I mean, their commitment to animal welfare is really appalling. So, they're
Right,
supporting things like compassionate farming. I mean, talk about an
right,
oxymoron.
right,
It's appalling.
right.
It's just appalling, and makes my stomach turn. So, yes, yeah,
Right, right. So, okay, so you were in a wheelchair. So what
yes.
happened from there?
Okay, so I was so long story short, I was suddenly found myself going from being super fit and a ballerina, and doing West End shows and teaching and all the rest of it, to being somebody who was in a wheelchair. I was completely non-weight bearing. I'd developed rheumatoid arthritis, the autoimmune condition. So for those people watching and listening who don't necessarily know what RA is, it's an autoimmune condition. It predominantly manifests in the joints, but actually, because it's systemic, it actually affects every single organ in the body. So any place there's connective tissue, which is everywhere, is affected. Even includes inflaming the brain, the kidneys, the lungs, the liver. Everything gets inflamed, and it is horrendous. I had it as bad as you could possibly get it, because for me, every single one of my joints was affected, which is very unusual. It's unusual for it to
Wow.
be that bad.
And
And
you were age 30, you were in
I
your
was
30s?
30. That's right. Yes. Gosh, you've done your
Wow.
homework. Thank you. That's wonderful. Yeah, I was about 30 at the time. And 30, yeah. And anyway, yes, I just got worse and worse. And then after a period of immense stress, to do with work relationships and so on, I just got into this incredible over kind of activity of my immune system. I went into what's called a cytokine storm, and it's where those hormonal messengers literally go crazy and they just attack everything. And my weight plummeted down to about 80, 85 pounds.
Oh my
I
goodness.
catabolized all of my muscle. I had no muscle tissue left in my body. And when that happens, your body kind of contracts. I just contracted into a fetal position. I couldn't move. I was put into hospice care because they really did believe that I probably only had a couple of weeks to live.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I was,
What was your state of mind during all of this? Were you
well,
terrified? Were you just in survival mode?
yeah, I think I was in probably survival mode, but also having come from a long line of very obstreperous women who will not be told, especially by the medical fraternity. I just couldn't really accept what I was being told by these men
Okay.
who were saying, well, that's it, you're off, exit stage left. I just couldn't get right with that. I couldn't accept it, Chrissy. So this is the thing. So I just really felt that it wasn't, I couldn't buy into it. It didn't feel right. Um, but nevertheless, being in hospice care, I made friends with all the fantastic, amazing, incredible nurses. They were helping me with physio because there was no physio person in this unit because you generally don't have physios in hospice units, so they were they were actually being incredible. They were like, well, actually, look, dear, if you feel that you're able to do this. Let's try and start to move you. Let's try and start to see if we can mobilize anything.
Hmm.
It was absolute excruciating agony. Just can't even describe. I mean, when you have RA, it's like every single joint has a red hot knife being stuck in it, which is being twisted. It is
Ooh.
that level of pain, and people don't realize. And a lot of people say, when you say rheumatoid arthritis, they'll say, "Oh, but you're too young to have arthritis." Well, they did say in those days, "Oh, but you're far too young to have arthritis." But yeah, it's just horrific. And the very sad thing about RA is that it can actually affect children. So
Mm.
it's a devastating, lethal disease, as lethal as any of the other very serious illnesses like cancer, heart disease, and so on are.
Mm.
It's really, really dangerous. So I just couldn't get right with that. So I sort of hung on and hung on and hung on. Eventually, they said, "Look, okay, you're very seriously ill, but hospice is not the right place for you. We're moving you into a care home where they've got the lifting equipment. They can get you in and out of bed. They can get you into the wheelchair. They can get you onto the loo. They can get you into the shower and things like that." And so I stayed there for another 6 months as I was trying to sort of get myself better. At this time, all my friends were coming in. I was by this time I was working in complementary medicine and natural health care. So we were all throwing everything we had at it. But again, to my dismay, it was the 90s now, early 90s, and we still thought that oily fish was anti-inflammatory because of the omega-3s. I mean, obviously we know differently now. We know it's actually highly pro-inflammatory. But at the time, this was the message we were being sold. So, I was doing my fish, my salads, my glass of wine, red wine because of the resveratrol. We now can look back with the benefit of hindsight and with the wisdom that we all have nowadays and realize just how appallingly bad that was. And so we threw lots of bits and pieces at all of this, and eventually I started getting a little better. But here's the interesting part. 5 different friends, none of whom who knew each other, were nagging me saying, "Look, you've done everything. You've tried every therapy going. what you need to do is you need to go on a raw vegan diet. Now,
Five different people
terminology,
said this?
five different people said this. Yeah.
Wow.
Very strange, very, very spooky. And eventually, it got into my thick skull that actually, okay, fine, all these people, and they'd all had quite severe illnesses that they'd
Hmm.
come through. One of them had leukemia, one of them had had liver cancer, one had had breast cancer, and the other two had had autoimmune illness. And anyway, so I just thought, okay, fine, there's a message from the universe here.
Hmm.
And I did. I took myself off to, funnily enough, to Hippocrates. And again, note the terminology: whole food, raw, vegan diet. So again, I thought, okay, fine, a vegan diet. Well, all right, I'll give it a go. And here's the thing, Chrissy, I went there, I did the 3-week program, went there in a wheelchair, came out walking, pushing the wheelchair, and able to walk up and down the beach 3 miles a day and then do back-to-back yoga and Pilates classes. Now, going from somebody who could not move, that's my new baby cat. Hello, darling. Going from somebody who could not move to somebody who was actually becoming reasonably physically fit within 3 weeks was astounding. Now, because of the magic of that, because it was so extraordinary, I sort of felt, oh, happy days. This is great. I've been healed. I've been cured. I can go back to my old way, normal way of eating. So
Hmm.
the penny hadn't dropped. And of course, I went back to the normal way of eating, which was back then healthy. And I, still hadn't understood the vegan aspect of the message. So I went straight back into a wheelchair. I thought, oh, this is interesting. Okay.
Wow.
So I went back and I did my raw vegan diet again, and happy days. Everything was sorted. And then somebody said, have you seen a film called, back then it was Forks Over Knives and Eating, probably a couple of other films that I can't quite remember. But yeah, so I watched those, and that was when the penny actually dropped. And I started to understand veganism.
Wow.
Um,
What was that? What
yeah.
was that second film?
It was Forks Over Knives and Eating. I don't know. Have you seen
Eating. I
Eating?
don't know that one.
Oh, it's great. I mean, it
Okay.
looks a little dated nowadays, but the
Yeah.
message is fantastic. And it's a really good. It's got all of the. It's got people like Colin Campbell. It's got. I'm pretty sure it's got Dr. Esselstyn. It's got all of all of the champions of our movement from all
Yeah.
of those years
Yeah.
ago, and they still are champions, of course. And so, so it's got bits and pieces there, and it's showing people sort of going through the process, consultations with doctors, a bit like Forks Over Knives in many ways, but it
Hmm.
then does switch to animal welfare. And it's done incredibly cleverly. So whoever the producers were, I don't know who they were off the top of my head, but they did a blooming good job. And so that's when, for me, and of course, Forks Over Knives, that's when the penny dropped, and I realized, oh my goodness, animal welfare. And that's when that came into my understanding and realization, and really getting a feel for what this was all about. Um, and I haven't looked back since.
That's amazing. And thank you for mentioning that film because, again, that was not on my radar. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
thrilled to discover another resource.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
So where did you go from there? How did this information, this firsthand information about food and what you were eating, how did that affect your conception of
Yeah.
complementary medicine?
Yeah. Well, gosh, various things happened. So my day job is that I, 31 years ago, founded this organization called the Complementary Medical Association. It's now the world's leading professional association for very highly qualified complementary and integrative medical practitioners, training schools, and anybody involved in this sector. We're non-profit, we're a standards setting body, and as I say, we operate globally. So I very swiftly ensured that our agenda, shall we say? People always say, "Oh, the vegan agenda." Yeah, our agenda is to be kind to animals. Yeah, really bad. Yeah,
Right,
so
right.
I ensured that our agenda was, was compassion driven. That we don't work with organisations that are producing anything that contains animal derived products. It's really interesting. I don't know if you find this, Chrissy, and I'm sure I don't know if our viewers and listeners find this, but there are quite a few companies who, product companies in the natural health field, say, "Oh yeah, yeah, the product's cruelty free." Well, is it vegan though? Oh, no. It contains, I'm thinking of collagen products, for example, marketed as cruelty free products, but they contain extracts of fish skin because it's a byproduct of the fish industry. And it's deemed to be cruelty free because, don't worry, the fish is dead. Well, hello. I mean, what's that about? Where's your head? So, we had to be very, very careful. We looked at
Mm.
everything. We never had any truck with things like traditional Chinese medicine where they were advocating the use of animal products anywhere, especially, of course, obviously, they do tend to use in China endangered species, and they do also in things like Ayurvedic medicine. So we've always been very, very careful throughout the 30 odd years. So, we knew about all of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is where I transformed the organization to be a compassion-driven organization, so that we're really raising the awareness of veganism as a compassionate lifestyle, raising awareness of the horrors of the industrial agriculture, animal agriculture industries. And so we're kind of coming at this from kind of like a triple perspective. So the first part of the perspective is, of course, animal welfare. And then, of course, ecology and the planetary welfare. And then, of course, really looking at this from a health perspective as well, because the data, they speak for themselves. For themselves, we've got the Adventist health studies, we've got the EPIC studies, EPIC Oxford studies. We've got these massive, large scale epidemiological studies that show that this is what we should, as human beings, be eating.
Right.
Oxford, in fact, we've had some really great articles in things like the British Medical Journal, the Lancet, and so on, where they're looking at the impact of, if everybody goes plant-based, what happens to the planet. And these are not funded by some dark, kind of WEF, conspiracy theory going on. It's pretty basic ecology, it's ecological science, and it's been well researched, and it's not funded, it's not sort of dark actors, Svengali and
Right.
things behind the scenes. So, all of this stuff stands up to scrutiny. We know it does.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful trajectory, and that makes so much sense. I love how you transformed your organization
Yeah.
into, complementing compassion, so to speak.
Mm. Yes. Yeah.
And for me, I've shared this many times on the show, but I had a similar learning curve where I first came to veganism out of concern for the animals. And it
Mm.
was only after the fact that I learned about the health benefits and the benefits for the planet and the
Yeah.
benefits for starving children in Africa. And for me,
Yes.
it really was like a spiritual awakening. And it was
Mm.
almost as if I discovered love as a principle of physics,
Yes.
and in hindsight, it seems so clear. Like, how could the products of torture and suffering possibly be healing to my body? It makes, or
Mm.
to the planet.
Yeah.
So in
Yeah.
hindsight, it makes so much sense. But
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
until you see it, you
Yeah.
you just don't see it. So
Mm.
as far as these changes that you made to your agency and your official agenda, you actually had an had a vegan agenda.
Yeah.
How did that go over with the other alternative. What I was about to ask was, how did this change that you made to your organization and becoming, compassionate, how did that go over with all the others in the field, all these holistic and alternative health
Yeah,
organizations?
it actually went over very, very well. When
It
we
did.
dropped,
Okay.
yeah, when we dropped certain members, we just explained to them, very, very gently that if you would like to rethink your formulations, and we gave them really, really good data so that they could look at what they were doing, and we'd say, well, if you did this, this, and this, you could create the same sort of product or product line. And, we appreciate it's a lot of R&D, but, we would be then happy to put you in front of our members, your ideal target market. So, we waved, filthy lucre, we waved pounds and dollars in front of them and said, look, if you change this, you're going to have a bigger market. And so that drove
That's the
change.
way to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, bribery and
That's
corruption.
incredible. How many of them took that opportunity and
A
actually did
goodly,
change their
Yeah, a
form?
goodly number did actually, because they realised that, you see, we're kind of unique in so far as we have such a massive reach to their ideal target audience. So we were able to facilitate massive change industry-wide in the natural health
Wow.
arena. So a lot of people, they effortlessly said, yeah, okay, we're on board, especially when we then started talking about compassion, animal welfare, the planet, the rainforest and palm oil and orangutans and, everything that we know about, everything that you and I talk about.
Yes.
So yeah, it did make change. As far as our members, our practitioners, our training schools and so on were concerned, that was a very easy soft target, because people tend to get into complementary and integrative medicine because they tend to be incredibly compassionate, empathetic people to start with. They get into this field because they want to help people. And when we started talking about, well, did you know this, and this? Did you know this is what's going on? This is what's happening in Brazil. This is what's happening in Borneo. This is what's going on, with dairy farming. This is what's going on with poultry farming. And nobody knew, because it's all very covert, isn't it? It's all very, very well disguised. So we started bringing all of this to the forefront. And quite honestly, we were preaching to the choir. They said, yeah, okay, great. Right, we're on board. Absolutely. So, I don't think anybody was really recommending animal-based products, but they would have been, for example, recommending things like fish oil, because that's always been something. It's still, people are still taking fish oils, omega-3 essential fatty acids, without realizing what the ramifications are, what the source actually is. It's very easy to take these things without actually thinking it through, because that's all very elegantly hidden, isn't it? Nobody's actually showing people
Right.
pictures of trawlers and what comes up with those great big nets, and the dolphins, and all of the other creatures that the catch that is caught and murdered, aside from the poor fish that are the target. So I think when they started realizing, and I think when people started realizing, things have changed. Things have changed massively. I'm very fortunate to be based in the UK most of the time, and it's probably one of the best countries in the world to be vegan in. Last
Hmm.
year alone, we added another million thereabouts vegans to our growing army of vegans.
Wow.
So yeah, we're really, when you consider how small our population is compared to the US, it's a big, big percentage. So it's very, very easy here to get vegan meals if you're out. Plant-based is everywhere. Walk into a pub, you
Hmm.
can get a plant-based burger. It's really, really easy here. So we're
That's
very blessed.
amazing. Oh, a million new vegans. What
Yeah.
what do you attribute that change to?
Awareness. We've got so many people really promoting compassionate lifestyles, veganism. Um, we do obviously veganuary here, so that's, you have that in the States as well, I'm sure. So it's
Yes.
where old school vegans like us get join in and help. people to understand what they need to be doing and how to easily transition, how
Right.
to take advantage of
Right.
some of those, the easy targets like the analog foods and so on, just to kind of get them over that hump.
Sure.
And so we do a lot of that. There's an awful lot of vegan outreach, and there's a lot of kindness and compassion in the way that it's done. So there's people like myself and so many others who are educating and advocating in such a way that people are excited by the concept. And people read, once you
Mm.
talk about animal agriculture, people do sort of say, well, yeah, I didn't know that. And no, that isn't right. No, that's not acceptable. So the majority of people are really reasonable, and they understand that this compassionate lifestyle is absolutely right. It's morally right. There'll always be people who go, oh, well, yeah, don't tell me what to eat. Well, fine, okay, I'm not telling you what to eat, but I'm just bringing to your attention. And then what we do is stuff them full of lovely grub and kindness. And look, this is what we eat. This is how we eat. And, the comment that I tend to always get back after my parties is, well, wasn't that difficult for you to make a party where you're serving up all this lovely food but you're vegan? And I'm saying, yeah, but you didn't eat anything that wasn't vegan. Really? Well, if I knew it was that tasty, I'd have gone vegan earlier, because I agree that you shouldn't be unkind to animals. I'm an animal lover. Oh, and you can see the cogs turning. You can see them making the connection, and it's pretty magical, actually. It really is. I'm sure you find
Right.
exactly the
Yeah.
same. Yeah.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, that sort of food activism is probably more powerful than anything else, because if you can get people eating delicious, health promoting vegan food
Yeah.
and enjoying it, then, you don't have to talk to them about philosophy or animal rights or
That's
animal
right. Yeah.
liberation or
Yeah. Yeah.
anything ideological.
Yes.
So tell me this, how did you evolve both as a vegan and as a health professional? Did you do
Right.
any formal training, and did you stay
Yeah.
raw? It's a lot of questions, but wherever you
Okay,
want to
okay,
take
okay.
that.
Yeah. To answer the last question first, no, I did not stay raw, because it's very easy to be raw in lovely, warm places like Florida. But
Not so much in London.
not so much in the winter in England, although we are having a heat wave right now, so it's very easy to be raw. So no, I found that just adding in a few bits and pieces like some baked potatoes and so on. So that's actually still in line with things like natural hygiene. So of course, you were saying you spoke with my partner, Dr. Frank Sabatino, yesterday, a great advocate of natural hygiene, and Herbert Shelton was advocating high raw diet, but he was saying it's fine to have your odd sort of jagged potato or sweet potato or what have you cooked. So, that's the kind of thing that I will do. So my meals are predominantly fruit and maybe some oatmeal in the morning, or perhaps a smoothie with all the goodies in. And then at lunchtime, a big salad, huge salad, massive. And then at evening time, probably some steamed veggies, perhaps with a sweet potato, that sort of thing. So very simple, very, very easy. And it just works. It works brilliantly. And my body thanks me for it. I'm in complete remission from my autoimmune illnesses. So, it enables me to work, really, really hard, long hours, travel the world, lecture, do all the things I have to do. So I'm sort of high raw, but not completely raw. I think different strokes for different folks, and I wouldn't recommend one way or the other, because I think people have to find their own way and what suits them physically. If you can do fully raw, that's fantastic. Go for it. Brilliant. If that's what your metabolism thrives on. So we need to be sensible about this. And then the trajectory. So as I mentioned, I founded the Complementary Medical Association 31 years ago. My training, my first discipline, having come back from all my travels and dancing and so on, I studied homeopathic medicine for over 7 years. I then went on to bolt on other things, psychotherapy, things like NLP, some of the energy medicine techniques like Reiki, as so many of us practitioners do. We're perennial researchers and students, nutrition, herbal medicine, and just aromatherapy, all of these things that reach out to us and say, I really would like to do that, naturopathy as well. So I've been bolting on bits and pieces for the last my career in complementary medicine is probably 40 odd years, really, all told.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's a long
And at a
time.
certain point, yeah, and you studied with Dr. Herbert Benson at one point, who shares my
I
last name, but
did,
is not a
yes.
relation to my knowledge. But I
Right,
first
right.
heard of him when I read, someone recommended his book, The Relaxation Response, because
Yes.
I've long had a daily meditation practice, but I was contemplating doing a course in transcendental meditation,
Oh,
and his
yeah,
book, The Relaxation Response, is
it is.
essentially sets forth that technique. So
Yeah.
when did you study with him, and what was that
Oh,
experience like?
that was 2012. So I had the great fortune of going over to the Benson Henry Institute, and this was based at Harvard Medical School. And Dr. Benson, who was the most extraordinary, precious man, absolutely incredible. So I was lucky enough to learn everything, in mind body medicine that he was teaching directly from him, so straight
Mm.
from the source. And so, yeah, I'm a great advocate for things like the relaxation response. On my website, I have an free instructional download so that people can learn it easily. His book is available very inexpensively, the first book, The Relaxation Response. He was a fantastic scientist, a brilliant researcher. His work was second to none, really, in that field. And then along on his coattails came people like John Kabat-Zinn, Sharon Salzberg, and just, all of these giants. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants, aren't we? So I was really so fortunate to be able to go there and study with him. I just keep adding bits and pieces to my arsenal. I've written several books now. I've been very fortunate enough to kind of pick the right topic at the right time. So they've all been very, very successful number one bestsellers. So culminating in the most recent book, which is called Rewind Your Body Clock, The Complete Natural Guide to a Happier, Healthier, Younger You. And the reason I wrote that was because when I was very, very sick, I had a friend come in to see me and he said, "Hey, I've got this gizmo here. I've got this amazing machine. Let's look at your biological age and see how ill you really are." I thought, oh my gosh, okay, all right. And I was, at this time, I think it was about 34, 35. And I measured biologically at 55 years old. And I thought, oops, that's not good. I knew I was ill, but I didn't realize that, and that's a bit of an affront to one's ego, is it not? So I just thought, oh dear, I better do something about this. And this is where I started to go on this wellness journey. After I'd gone, fully plant-based and then properly whole food, plant-based, vegan, I retested after about 6 months or so. And within 6 months, I'd gone from a biological age of 55 to a biological age of 27. So I'd knocked off not just, a lot from the original starting position, but actually a lot from my chronological age. So interestingly enough, for a lot of years, obviously, I'm 60 now, so life catches up with you, and you do sort of age biologically, no matter sort of what you do, really. You have stressors in life. Life throws things at you that you're not expecting. So things do impact upon us. We're not going to stay 27 biologically forever. But I'm actually measuring now at 35, biologically speaking. So I have
Wow.
aged biologically, but it's still remarkably less than my chronological age. So 25 years or so less than my chronological age. And as I say, when I've got this burden of very severe autoimmune illness, that, I'm kind of, the deck is stacked against me. But despite that, I'm still doing really, really well. But I just have to say, and I think a lot of that is things along the way. So you're talking about a meditation practice, which of course helps us deal with stressors. It gives us that thinking space before we respond. It enhances our grey matter. It dramatically improves our neuroplasticity. So all of these things actually really play into helping us to remain younger, because this is really the only things that we know of from a research perspective that can actually reduce, either maintain or reduce our biological age, keeping those telomeres long, those little bits and pieces at the end of our chromosomes, essentially a bit like that little aglet on the end of our shoelaces. So to stop those from degrading and actually helping them to lengthen are a whole food plant-based diet, meditation, and appropriate exercise. And there is no drug on this planet yet that can achieve that. So, in this field, being these wonderful, compassionate vegans that we are, that alone, because of the way that compassion impacts the health of our, not just us emotionally, but also psychologically and cognitively. And so many vegans talk about this, don't they? About how our capacity for love and compassion massively increases when we go vegan and we understand, what we're doing and why we're doing it, embracing concepts like ahimsa and so on. All of this is actually impacting us, whether we're eating a healthy diet or not. There are a lot of vegans out there who don't choose to eat a healthy diet because it's purely animal welfare based, which is fine. That's absolutely okay for them if that's what appeals to them and how they feel happiest and whole in their lives. But for those who also then do, whole food plant-based diet and do appropriate exercise, you've got this extra kind of double, triple whammy that's actually having an extraordinary impact upon us mentally, emotionally,
Yes.
physically, and spiritually. Yeah.
Yes, that's so beautifully put. And those people you described, the animal rights, animal ethical vegans who are
Mm.
not living a healthy lifestyle, in my health coaching work, those are probably my favorite sector to work with, because the way I see it is, yes, you're absolutely right. Everyone can do what they want and live as healthy or unhealthy as they choose. But
Yes.
that said, I feel like if anyone deserves to feel good, it's those people, So
Yes. Yes.
I love to help
Yeah.
people just get the most and just feel as good as they can.
Yeah.
Because why? We don't have to settle for one or the other, of course.
I
But
agree.
I'm curious. Yeah,
Chrissy.
go ahead. No,
So,
go ahead.
well, I was
Mhm.
just going to say, actually, yes, I completely agree. And I think actually, when we start talking to people who are vegan but they're not wanting to be particularly healthy, I was writing an article just today. Actually, I was doing some research about the cost of non-communicable diseases. So, cancers, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, autoimmunity, and so on. The most recent figures we have are from 2019, and we're waiting for the next tranche of research to catch up. But back then, it was costing America, the cost of treating these diseases is 110 million pounds, $1 million, I should say, $1 million a day, which is an extraordinary day, $110 million every single day, day in, day out. And the point is that most of these illnesses are avoidable, reversible. We can halt them even if we can't reverse them if they're too far gone. And
Right.
so when you start talking to people about their responsibility to themselves, their families, their loved ones, but also economically and to
Yes.
society in order to
Yeah.
maintain, a viable health and welfare system, health and wellness system, this is when, things like pennies drop and they start to realize that,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
actually,
That's
maybe,
that's
yeah,
Yeah, I agree, 1000%. And in fact, that reminds me, I think shortly after I went vegan, maybe almost a decade ago at this point, I wrote an article for the Main Street Vegan blog on that very
Oh,
subject. And the title, if I remember it correctly, was Your Health, a Social Justice Obligation
yes.
Responsibility. And it's true because by remaining sick and ill, that's how we give power to
Mm,
big pharma and big food and
yes.
the
Yes.
mainstream medical
Yes.
industrial complex.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there is that balance between what we do for just us and what our civic responsibility is.
Mm, mm.
But Jayney, I'm so interested in just your professional path because I guess because I relate in many ways.
Mm.
You're clearly someone who has lots of irons in many fires. So what did your professional path look like? I mean, you were writing books. Were you seeing clients all this
Yes.
time, or were you
Yes.
doing research? What did your
Uh,
day to day work
oh
life look
gosh.
like?
Long, long. Okay. So
Yeah.
yes, yeah, I pack a lot in to my days because I enjoy it and I'm driven. I'm purpose driven. I think that really, I'm sure it's exactly the same for you. So I do still maintain a practice, and so I see people from all over the world virtually via Zoom or whatever. And so so the way that I tend to work is I'll get up, do the necessary things. So ensuring that I'm, feeding myself properly, feeding my animal family properly, and then obviously take doggy for a walk, make sure the kittens are all sorted. And then when we get back from our walk, I'll get on my bike and do my good, whatever Peloton thing I'm going to do for that day. Then I'll do restorative yoga and meditation. So that sets me up for the day. So that's pretty early. And then, or I'll probably have breakfast after that, because obviously you don't want to do all of that on a
What
full
time do
stomach.
you get up in the morning?
I actually get up at about 5:30, 6 o'clock. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's quiet time. It's nice, and you can do all of that stuff then without the
Mhm.
phone calls and the emails and all the rest of it. Have a bite to eat, and then I'll just literally hit the ground running, answering emails and so on. And then what I do, this is a sort of like almost like a religious practice for me. I have a 90-minute session every single day. My team know that I'm not available, I'm not disturbable, I'm not even there as far as they're concerned. I've gone away. And that's where I do my focused work. So this is not the busy work of answering emails and so on, but this is planning. So whether I'm planning a new book or whether I'm planning a screenplay, whether I'm planning some new concept for the Complementary Medical Association, developing the organization further. So that is planning, planning, planning. And then really the rest of the day, pretty much for the rest of the morning, is spent, doing the busy work of the answering emails, talking to the team, making sure everybody knows what they're doing, knows what the plan is, where we're going. And then for the afternoon, it will be things like looking after clients. So again, as I say, mostly remote. Most of the people that I look after from the client side of things are scattered all over the world. A lot of them are from America. And then my big project coming up is that I've bought this extraordinary building. It's the most amazing house. It's 600 years old, so it predates even the Tudor era. It's actually Plantagenet, and it is magnificent. They knew how to build houses in those days. It's in the most incredible condition, and so the overarching idea, the concept, the goal is to run small scale wellness retreats here. I'm in the
Ah,
most magical part of the UK, really close to places like, well, Windsor Castle, where the King lives, and Buckingham Palace. Windsor Castle's 10 minutes down the road. Buckingham Palace is 20 minutes into London. I'm close to things like Ascot. I'm close to Henley for the rowing, and very close to Wimbledon, and really close to places like Bath and Glastonbury and all of those magical places that, people hear about close to fairy tale castles. So yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And, I just think that people would love to have the opportunity to spend time in, a place that has been around for 600 years. And it has this incredibly warm feeling. It's very healing.
Mm.
And as long as they don't mind animals, we've got little Jessie, my rescue hound. I've got the two little kittens, just also from the same rescue place. So as long as people don't mind animals, as long as they're animal lovers, they'll get on just fine. But we'll be doing, whole beautiful vegan retreats, and it's just going to be just magical. So that's the next thing on my agenda.
Wow.
Using that agenda
Yeah,
word again.
what's the timeline for this retreat
Um,
center?
I'm ready to take people in the autumn. I'm set up to go, really ready.
Wow. So
Yes.
you've really done a lot to prepare for this.
Yeah, a lot. It's been
Oh,
a
that's amazing.
lifetime. Yeah, it's kind of been, well, I say lifetime, but certainly really since going to Hippocrates the first time, and then of course to Dr. Frank Sabatino's place, the Regency Health Retreat, and then seeing other retreats that he's done and other retreats that friends of mine have done. It's something I've always wanted to do, Chrissy, and it's just exciting. And I think it's lovely to be able to look after people, introduce them to, this lifestyle, and yeah, it's just magical, and I can't wait.
Oh, that's great. Well, congratulations on that launch, soon to be launched venture. It sounds
Yes,
fabulous.
thank
And it
you.
really sounds like a culmination of everything that you've been
It
working toward.
is. It is.
And
Yes. Yeah.
I hope I can come sometime. It sounds absolutely amazing. I lived
Oh,
in London for 6 months after college,
oh
but I have
wow.
not been back since. So,
Where were
um,
you in London?
I had an apartment in Golders Green.
Oh wow. Yeah. Really nice. Northwest London.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It was a long, long time ago, but it was fun, even though it rained, I think, almost every single day.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Well, yes, that's fair comment. It can do, absolutely. I mean, we've got freak weather at the moment. It's the same weather here as it is in Florida, which is
Mhm.
completely unheard of. But we've got rain next week, so at least that's what's forecast. So we'll be back
Yes,
to
yeah.
normal. But it's not always, I mean, having said that, our autumns go on a long time. They're beautifully spectacular with all the
Mm,
changing, because we've got so many beautiful seasons here. And we get very mild, lovely weather. It's very soft and very friendly.
yes,
So it's a nice
yes.
time to start the retreats. Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful. Um, well, thank you so much for sharing all this, great, just these great stories and this really unique life
Mm,
experience that you've had. I've got just a couple more questions before we wrap up.
yes.
But among other things, I'm curious, of course, as you mentioned your partner, Dr. Frank Sabatino, who was a recent guest on the Vegan
Yes.
Posse. What's it like having a partner who shares your vision and
Um,
has this same view of health and nutrition, or is it the same? I'm assuming it's very same to
exactly
you.
aligned. Yeah, exactly
Yeah.
aligned. It's magical. I wouldn't be able to be with somebody who wasn't vegan. I don't know if you would feel this way, Chrissy, but the thing is that um, I know people do manage to live with non-vegans and cook for them and so on. I wouldn't be able to do that. So I'm just extraordinarily lucky to have found Frank. Given that we do the same sort of work as well, so we both teach, we both write books, we both lecture all over the world. So we kind of get each other. It's what's weird about our relationship. I think a lot of people think, "Oh, that's really weird." How close can that relationship really be? Because you're 4,500 miles apart. Um, it's actually the most.
Because he lives in the United States
He's
and
in
you're in the
Florida
UK,
and I'm
of
in the
course.
UK. That's right. So the way we manage it is we speak every day for probably an hour to a couple of hours or more. So we probably communicate more than most couples that live together.
Right.
So we FaceTime a lot. We speak throughout the day and the evening and so on. And so it's lovely. But we try to travel across the pond, he coming here or me going there, every couple of months, and we'll spend 2-3 weeks together. So that's all.
Mm,
It's like a honeymoon. Whenever we get together, we appreciate each other so much. It's just this extraordinary energy, beautiful, beautiful, loving energy. And honestly, it's funny to say it's the most functional relationship I've ever had. But as they say, you have to kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince, don't you? So
right,
I kissed
right.
a lot
And
of
even
frogs.
though we vegans don't necessarily mind kissing frogs, but
Correct.
ultimately we prefer to end up with a human in most cases. Well, what
Indeed.
was it like for the two of you during the COVID years?
Well, that was tough because Brits were not allowed to travel to the US.
I
However,
remember.
Frank was allowed to travel to the UK,
Oh,
and
okay.
on the proviso that he did testing, and they made it really, really difficult. So he had to test within 24 hours of flying over, and then before flying back, he had to test and get his results within 24 hours of flying again. So we were like always biting our nails. Is the result going to come through? Is he going to be able to get on that plane? It was really scary. But we were okay. He did all the running, bless him. He did all the traveling over for
Mm,
all of lockdown. And he was just a diamond. I mean, honestly, yeah, he's an extraordinary man. Quite amazing. Just driven by love, compassion, and kindness. And yeah, so he just did it. And then obviously, as soon as I was allowed to, as soon as I was allowed, the restrictions in the US, lifted. Um, I was on a plane immediately. So I did a lot of,
mm,
return journeys, just to sort of even things up. We made it work. And
yeah.
so we're still here. What are we, 12 years into this crazy relationship? And yeah.
Wow. So no thoughts of relocating permanently, like one way or the other, either
I
him
think
to.
what well, no, I think what will happen, and our plan is that we will end up doing 6 months here in the UK, 6 months there. So probably 6 months through the summer here, which is delightful, and into the autumn,
Mm,
and then through the winter we'll do the 6 months there. And we may even go to other countries. My brother's currently in the process of buying a place in France, so we'll be going over there, doing bits and pieces there as well, running retreats and whatnot. So we've got kind of plans.
yeah.
Slightly difficult for him because he has his retreats there. I'll be having my retreats here. So we have times when we actually can't travel, but I don't mind going over to
Mhm.
him when he has his retreats because I always end up getting roped into giving lectures and so on, which is always lovely. And he'll be doing the same thing. I put him to work here. So yeah, we make it work. It's unconventional,
It
but
sounds
then we're unconventional people.
right,
So
right. But so are both of you, and so are a lot of us listening, a lot of people watching and
yeah,
listening, and myself included.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
No, I always love hearing about those unconventional relationships because then
Mm.
that gives me space to re-envision what I assumed,
Yeah,
things had to
yeah,
look like, and
yes,
just opens up
yes.
some
I,
possibilities.
I agree,
Oh,
Chrissy. I think it's very interesting. I think because, when you get to a certain age, you're not looking at having to pair up because you want to have a family. You don't have to pool your income necessarily in order to afford a house or flat or whatever it is. So, you have that luxury when you're older. To be able to not have that cookie cutter relationship. And it's just better for the heart and the soul and the sanity, I think, to sometimes spend time apart because you do have that massive appreciation of when you are
mhm.
allowed and able and time permits you to get together. So yeah, I think
Right.
I highly recommend it.
Yes, well, wonderful, wonderful. So, Janie, where can people stay in touch and find out about your upcoming retreats and find your book? What's the best
Okay.
place for them to do that?
Yes. So for my work and so on the health and wellness and looking after people's side of things is simply janeygoddard.org. Noting that I've got a very strange spelling of my name. So I know you're going to share that info anyway,
Yes,
Chrissy.
we'll include it in the show notes. But
Thank you.
yes,
Good,
it's
good call. Good call.
Jayney.
That's it. Yep, exactly. So JayneyGoddard.org. And then if people are interested in finding out about the work that I do to promote complementary medicine globally, the Complementary Medical Association is v-cma.org.uk. So as I say, we're the world's largest professional association. We're a non-profit, just driven by compassion and kindness and the genuine heartfelt desire to help people and the animals and the planet. Yes.
Beautiful. And your book.
Oh yes, and the book.
Well, your
You
latest
can
book, I
pick
should
that up
say.
on yeah. So paperback, ebook, Kindle, whatever. The audio book. It's in translation all over the world, so it's easy
Wow.
enough to find online. Go to Google. So go to Amazon or wherever you get your books from. It'll be there. And so that book, it captured the zeitgeist, Chrissy. It went in to the Amazon charts, would you believe, on the day of launch at #1 of all books on Amazon. So that was massive.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. It got serialized by the Daily Mail twice. So yeah, it was the right thing
amazing.
at the right time.
Amazing.
It's still selling tons and tons and tons. But it went through a conventional publisher, so Watkins and Penguin Random House. So I see like a penny or two occasionally from that. But that's not the reason I wrote it. I wanted to write about my return to wellness, optimal, amazing wellness, but also give people the tools to stay happy, healthy, sexy, brainy, have fantastic cognitive function for as long as they possibly can. It's what we need to do in this day. We have to be our own doctors. We have to maintain our wellness as long as
Right.
we possibly can. Yeah.
Yes, of course, I agree. And congratulations on that massive success with your book. As
Thank
an
you.
author myself, although my
Yes.
novel is fiction, but
Yeah.
yes, I know what that means to
Yeah.
be the top book on Amazon. That's really, really something. So
Yeah. Crazy
congratulations
stuff.
on that. And more than
Thank
that,
you.
just for getting the message out to people who need to hear it and,
Yes.
helping humans and helping non-humans as well. So
Yeah.
thank you
Thank you.
again for joining us from across the pond. And we'll include all of the information you mentioned in the show notes so that people can find you and take advantage of everything that you're offering. And we
Thank you.
close every episode of the Vegan Posse. Oh, well, before I get to that, Jayney, the question that I like to ask all my guests, is there a particular word that for you sums up what being vegan is all about?
Actually, sorry, Chrissy, no, 3 words: love, kindness, and compassion.
Fair enough. The trilogy. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Beautiful. Okay. We'll allow it.
thank you.
And we close every episode by taking 30 seconds of silence for all the suffering animals, human and non human, who desire, as we all do, safety, happiness, and the freedom to live out their lives without interference. So, Jayney, I invite you to join me in 30 seconds of silence for the animals, and we'll conclude with the sound of the bell.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jayney, and thank you, Posse. See you next time. Until then, stay strong and stay true.